Hey folks, welcome back to This Week. I hope you had a fantastic one. If you are new here, welcome to This Week, a bi-weekly Saturday show that happens at 2 p.m. UTC, 3 p.m. West African, 4 p.m. Central, and 5 p.m. East African time, where we discuss current events across the spectrum, from serious stuff to the comical shenanigans happening on the African continent. But whatever we choose to focus on, we leave you informed, entertained, and there's always something to learn at the end of the day. Also, we hope. And to let you in on some of the many great things happening at Leaders of Africa, stop by our website at leadersofafrica.org to check out the Leaders of Africa Institute, where we offer a variety of world-class programs. Applications are currently open for Flagship Research Methods Program 2021 for students from all academic backgrounds. And did I mention that our courses are taught by world-renowned professors at the master's and PhD level? So check this out and other courses and thank me later. We're also having a continuation of the Towards Greater Integration series focused on the AFCFTA, which is the African Continental Free Trade Area. I know, it is quite a mouthful. But anyway, our next event happens on Thursday, April 29th. So please head over to our website to register and for more details. As we get on with this week, you might want to join our Discord community where the conversation never stops, and hit that subscribe and bell notification button below so you do not miss any of our content. And if you appreciate what you hear, please share the video so others too can have access to the good stuff. But for now, grab your favorite drink and join me as I torment my team with some quiz questions. Hi, people.
Hi.
Hey, Violet.
Hi.
Eva. Hi, Eva, you just got the vaccine. Tell us how you're doing and how you're feeling today.
I'm feeling very well. As you can see, I'm strong. I don't have any side effects apart from the fact that my arm is really sore. So that is the main issue that I'm facing right now. I can't really raise it properly. So I just hope that, it goes away pretty soon.
At least I'm glad to know you're feeling okay. That gives me courage to go for mine as well. How about you, Ghana? How are you doing? And any plans to get the vaccine?
Well, I got my second shot, and I had a little pain on my left hand, but it was all okay. And I think I felt really good. I won't consider that to be a side effect because even with the flu vaccine, I do have very little pains on my hands when I go for the flu vaccine. I consider it to be normal. So, Eva, I'm so sorry to hear your story. Yeah, but I think it has to do with the state of mind of Eva. Eva was really afraid before going for the vaccine.
Great, Ghana. And in the spirit of vaccination, please allow me to vaccinate you with a quiz question. So, Ghana, which Central African country is suing its East African neighbor at the International Court of Justice for $4.3 billion in reparations for its role in mineral-related conflicts?
I'm not aware, but I'm not aware of this country. I need help.
Can I help?
Anyone want to take a stab at it? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so the DRC is suing Uganda for the war that took place in the early 2000s.
Absolutely, the answer is the DRC. But Gloria, that doesn't absolve you from the next quiz question. So yes, folks, the DRC. Yes, the DRC is in the International Court of Justice seeking $4.3 billion in reparations payments from neighboring Uganda for its role in the conflicts in the country's mineral-rich province of Ituri. And the UN Court, also known as the World Court, is holding hearings this week in the long-running dispute between the DRC and Uganda over damages caused from 1998 to 2003. So, Ghana, what's on your mind?
Thanks so much for asking this very regular, interesting question. It's peace, it's stability on the continent as a result of the death of that strong man, a politician, and a military man who believed that for there to be peace, there must be war. He believed in using the Bosnia approach to bring about peace in troubled regions. And that's President Idriss Déby, the former president of Chad. He was fondly referred to as a president that leads from the front. But whenever there is a crisis in the country involving rebellions, involving coup, he doesn't stay in his office. He goes to the war zone, leading his troop in the process. So because he believed that if you want to lead the troop, you have to smear the gunpowder. So last week, he died while doing exactly that. And different information has been released, how that came about. But it was said that the rebels that came in through the northern part of the country, and they have occupied a significant part of the country in that region, he went there, led his troop, and they were trying to broker peace. So the peace process broke down, and it was in the process that 4 of his generals were dropped dead, including himself, who sustained a gun injury. He was flew to the capital, but unfortunately, he couldn't make it. He became the president of Chad in 1990 after overthrowing the then president, Hissène Habré. And since then, he's been the president that most people in Chad get to know because he transitioned from being a military head of state to a politician who's been in charge of the country. And he recently won an election on April 11, and he died on April 17. He's since been replaced by his son, who's referred to General Kaka. And when I was speaking to friends who are from Chad, they told me that Kaka is a word that means grandmother, that the young Déby was actually raised by the mother of President Idriss Déby. So that's why they call him General Kaka. He's a very young boy of 37 years old. So we are troubled. Personally, I'm troubled about the death of Idriss Déby, not because I subscribe to everything he did when he was alive, because I'm looking at it from the stability point of view. He's one of those that have assisted us to stabilize against the consequences of insurgency in Nigeria. He has assisted us to stabilize the border region between Chad and Nigeria, because he was a very strong man, and he understands better how to fight guerrilla warfare. He trains in this when he was in France, and with his death, we are worried that the border is going to be more porous. Insurgency activities might be on the rise over there, without likely to exacerbate the instability in the northern part of Nigeria. And that may have overall consequences for stability on the continent, just like we had after the demise of Gaddafi, another strong man. Mm-hmm. So this is what is troubling my mind today. And it's a little bit sad for me today, honestly.
Yeah,
indeed,
absolutely.
It's a really sad event.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are thousands of people mourning his death, as you can see on the screen. This is the beginning of the funeral proceedings that are taking place in Chad right now. And so the country is mourning his loss. And as you mentioned, Ghana, he had just been elected to a 6th presidential term. So this was, as you've alluded to, been in power for many years. And I think one of the things, not necessarily reflecting on the life of the former president, but this broader question of stability, and as you said, the sort of the strong role that Chad has played in the region. I think one of the other things that we have to acknowledge is Idriss Déby's relationship with external powers as well, in the fact of projecting this power. And in particular, he has been a very close ally to a lot of Western countries, including the French in France, as well as the United States as well. And he played a fundamental sort of critical role in this broader war on terrorism and this broader emphasis on projecting power, particularly in Central as well as North Africa as well. And so one of the things that has been talked about, particularly amongst foreign policy circles in France and the United States, is will that continued relationship persist past his death to his son who has taken power? So that's a big question. And I think it also raises a broader question about the role and the relationship that countries have, particularly those leaders who have been in power for many years, have with external powers, and whether that relationship in this new dispensation should be reevaluated in some way, in some form. So I think that's another thing that we're thinking about, as reflecting on former President Déby's legacy as well.
Yeah, about relationship, we can look at it from two perspectives. One is who are those benefiting from this relationship? And how may such relationship be incentivizing bad governance and dictatorship? Because when you look, there are two sides to this. Idriss Déby, someone who was very instrumental to stability in the region. But does that mean that he has done when serving his people? Does that mean that he has led truly to the good, to the principles of good governance? Does that mean that the people of Chad, they've been, reaping the dividends of democracy? Does that mean that their livelihood situation has improved over the years? He's been the president for 30 years. So these are some of the things that are legitimate questions that we need to interrogate. This kind of relationship, because when you go back to Egypt, the president in Egypt currently, is a strong man to LCC. But when you look into his history, it's filled with blood of innocent folks. Those that he killed in Rabat and other places before he became the president. But because the foreign allies, they wanted him there, and he's still the president. So they overlook some of his iniquities. So these are some of the things that we need to interrogate, that as much as we appreciated his role in fighting insurgency, we also need to interrogate the question, who are the losers? Yeah, so this is one thing that I'm concerned about. And with the young Déby that is in charge, it made it assume the construction that this is a monarchy. When father dies, who takes over is the son. That raises some fundamental question. And I'm surprised that France is not questioning.
Actually, Ghana, now that you mentioned that, I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on the implications of this on, other strongmen on the African continent at the moment? I mean, we've seen quite a bit of this happening with different presidents dying and their sons taking over power, and eventually what happens to the country.
Yeah, so I mean, there are two ways I look at this. When you look at democracy as it is practiced, you begin to see that some of the way that democracy is practiced is incentivizing this wrong attitude. When President Trump was the president of the United States, the kids, the children were fully involved in the affairs of the country. They have seen almost everything. They were visible all over. In Africa, that may not be the way it plays out. The way it plays out is that, they realize they are doing the same thing in different way in the US. In Africa, what they do is to put their family in charge when they die, for the most part. And that is repeating itself. So when we look at it from a military point of view, we may be losing factors that are incentivizing this. I found this unacceptable.
Yeah.
Personally. And there are concerns now in Chad, because even the ranks and files of the military is beginning to become polarized. Because some of them are saying, no, the fact that the father was the president doesn't mean that he has the automatic right to be the one in charge after the demise of his father.
Yeah.
There are those supporting him, and there are those antagonizing against him. And what that means is that once the ranks and file of the military is under duress, once there are cliques within the military ranks and file, the rebel can easily take over the country. And when the rebel takes over the country can easily be plunged into a full-blown Libya situation.
Let me jump in there. Let me jump in there,
Okay.
Ghana, for just a moment.
Please,
yeah, I think it's important to provide context, and I think you've alluded to this. The situation of succession, particularly father to son succession, on the back of a long running sort of rulership is not unique to Chad, right? I think the other more recent parallel to this is what happened in Togo. So the father died in Togo. And then what happened was the military took over, just as they did in Chad. They took over, and then they installed the son in there. And then ECOWAS, the regional body, was not very comfortable with that, because ECOWAS has these burgeoning norms of preventing non-constitutional or unconstitutional changes of government and military regimes. So they actually punished Togo, and they sort of enacted sanctions, and then they found some sort of bargain that eventually led to elections where the Sun then won, elections that were fairly violent in the country, right? Because they were protesting this lack of a constitutional succession process. The same thing appears to be happening in Chad. And I think this is the case because, no one expects the president to die. They die unexpectedly, right? And they're not necessarily installed as the vice president, right, leading up to some immediate succession. In fact, oftentimes these leaders do not want to signal that they're completely signal that their son is going to be the one taking over, right? So they put them in oftentimes the military. And I think this is the same thing in Uganda. Correct me if I'm wrong, Violet, as well, in the way Museveni's thinking about it. But then after they die, they have to find a way to sort of have this transfer take place unexpectedly. And the concern for me is the reaction that the African Union has sort of had, or the lack of reaction, or at least the hesitancy here. Because I think unlike what the other death that we saw that we've covered on this week, that was the death of the former president in Tanzania, there was a constitutional succession process, right? The vice president took over. That's what the Constitution said, even if there were likely some within her party that did not want her to take over. But they embrace that normal constitutional process. But again, this father-son succession piece is happening in a not unconstitutional way, and it lays the ground for a lack of rule of law moving forward. If we can't respect succession in the immediate era.
We need to put a context to this. The situation in Tanzania is not the same as the situation in Chad. Tanzania was not experiencing a military rebellion seeking to take over the country.
Well,
Tanzania was not experiencing insurgency.
Can I come in?
Déby, yeah, you can come in. You can come in.
Eva, go ahead.
Yeah, you can come in.
No, I was just responding to Ghana's thing. I understand that Tanzania was not experiencing any conflict. But you should also understand that Chad has a constitution, that they should abide by the constitution. So where is the vice president now? Or they didn't have a vice president. I'm sure that the guy and the former president, the vice president, would have picked someone that he thinks is equally strong like himself to help him rule the country because of the nature, the conflict nature in the country. So where is the constitution? And also, if they are picking his son to succeed him, why have they suspended the constitution for 18 months and not just for 2 months for them to organize an election for someone?
Anytime.
For someone to take over.
I grew up in the Barak.
That raised a lot of concern here. And also it raises a lot of concern. Are the citizens okay with this kind of transition? That's the thing. Are they okay? We understand that there's conflict. If they don't act quickly, the rebels are going to take over. But that is why we also have the military. We have the military generals to be fighting this, and the civilians to be handling this presidential transition in the form of an election.
Yeah, I mean,
so for me, a good question to ask also might be, why did we have the rebels in the first place? Was it because he overstayed in power? And then now, if that was part of the reason, if we have his son installed as president, doesn't this just going to perpetuate the problem?
I mean, Chad has been a very troubled region for some time. And, part of that is because of the instability in Libya. And these guys that invaded Chad recently from the northern part, they actually trained in Libya. And they moved from Libya in about 400 trucks. And that should be raising some concerns. Where did they get the funding, the financial resources to pull about 400 trucks, with folks fully well armed, and they move into the country? Question. I mean, legitimate questions have been raised regarding the succession, which is a little bit unsettling to me. But at the same time, the silence of the African Union is understandable, because they understand that this was a strong man who was, playing a very formidable and a very instrumental role to fight insurgency. And for your information and for the information of our viewers, Chad is considered in the entire Africa as having the military that is best equipped to fight insurgency. And they've done this successfully on many occasions. So it's understandable that, one, African Union may decide to go silent on this issue, just like France is silent on this issue, because they might have felt that with Idriss there, with the son taking over, that it's more likely that the country will experience better stability compared to having the vice president take over. Because there are two things we need to know here. President Idriss Déby has his men. It doesn't mean that his men are the same as the men of the vice president. And this is a country that is going through a kind of internal civil war, a rebellion. And when you bring in a new vice president in this kind of situation where the country is highly unstable, there's a likelihood that there might be some higher level instability. Maybe the men of the former president might feel shifted. They might even bring a lot of things into his death. Because until now, there are still a lot of uncertainties about his death. But information from investigative journalism is indicating that he died in the process of a peace agreement that, broke apart, and 4 of his generals were dropped dead, and himself he sustained gunshots injuries that led to his death. So in all situations in life, we always wish we have a perfect situation. But the little I've come to realize about life is that a perfect situation is not necessarily the best in our situation in life.
Let me jump in there, right? And I just want to build just really briefly on what Eva said. And we've been talking about vice president. And I believe the Chadian constitution makes provisions for the president of the National Assembly to take over, because there may be a vice president. I'm a little unclear about those provisions. There may not have. It may have been a position that has been abolished, but traditionally it would be the president of the National Assembly. But as part of this sort of military takeover, they dissolved the entire National Assembly in this process, right? So it wasn't just like a coup, and sort of moving people around. It was, essentially abrogating an entire legislative body, right? Which we would think which is the pathway of succession, right? So I think there are broader constitutional concerns here with how things are going. And I think this is critical for the larger sub-region and the continent to enforce these norms that are on the book. Stability or not stability. Stability can be found through embracing normal constitutional processes, right? And instilling.
But
can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead, Gloria.
Yes, Gloria.
Can I just say something? First of all, I heard Ghana mention that maybe if the son takes over, there will be a bit more stability. That is just speculation. I just think that succession has to be prepared. Our leaders need to start thinking about this and being proactive. For me, there is no great leadership without thinking of your succession. So anybody who wants to call themselves as a great leader and made no plan for their succession, it is a fundamental failure. Good leaders think thoroughly about who is going to continue my legacy. And that is just a major failure on the part of our president. And we cannot keep doing this thing over and over and over again. Because as Peter mentioned, we've seen that playing out in Togo, in the DRC. I lived in a country where something like that happened, where the president died and the son took over. The problem with that, there is no continuation of legacy. The father has his own legacy, has his own experience, and there's just no way that legacy can continue. When Kabila the son took over, everything that we had known of his father, his priorities, and what he wanted to do for the country disappeared to a great extent. So, I mean, we can make excuses and say, but this context is different, but that context is different. But I just feel, it's clear that not many of our African leaders take this succession process seriously. And going back to Tanzania, thinking about it, I just want to applaud them. They did a great job to at least have respected the constitution and follow that by bringing the vice president into power.
I mean, that was a very valid point, Gloria. And Tanzania wasn't the first country that did in Africa. Tanzania, in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031, 2032, 2033, 2034, 2035, 2036, 2037, 2038, 2039, 2040, 2041, 2042, 2043, 2044, 2045, 2046, 2047, 2048, 2049, 2050, 2051, 2052, 2053, 2054, 2055, 2056, 2057, 2058, 2059, 2060, 2061, 2062, 2063, 2064, 2065, 2066, 2067, 2068, 2069, 2070, 2071, 2072, 2073, 2074, 2075, 2076, 2077, 2078, 2079, 2080, 2081, 2082, 2083, 2084, 2085, 2086, 2087, 2088, 2089, 2090, 2091, 2092, 2093, 2094, 2095, 2096, 2097, 2098, 2099, 2000, 2001, 2002, Nigeria did it. You may recall that we lost President Umaru Yar'Adua when he was the president. And Godwin Ebele Jonathan took over from him. And the same thing played out in Tanzania, in Libya, in Chad. There's an insurgency going on in Chad. This is not approving of what has happened in Chad. I do not support it. But sometimes when leaders make decisions, particularly at the continental level, they do a cost-benefit analysis. What legacy do we want to sustain? A little bit of context to this. Some of you may not be aware that Boko Haram, they are beginning to take over some places in Nigeria. And insurgency is increasing alarmingly every now and then in Nigeria. And part of that is because of the rising instability in Chad. And a good number of the factor is also because of the polarity and the situation in Niger Republic. So when you put all of that into consideration, it's understandable why some of the continental leaders are silent on this issue, because it's a very wicked situation, what we call wicked situation. A situation whereby the rules of the book may not be the way to go. And that is not saying the rules of the book should not be applicable. And again, we have to be aware of something. The election that recently took place in Libya is still a disputed election. And in the midst of this disputed election, there is a rebel which is almost taking over the capital. Yeah, if they don't do a lot, the rebel will run over the capital. If they run over the capital, Chad is going to be in a full-blown war, because we need to take into account the ethnic configuration of Chad. So there are a lot of instabilities parameters at play in Chad. And that is why in this situation, maybe the best thing we can do is to say 18 months is too long a time. Can we have a timetable within 9 months that foster, transition to a democratic leadership? That is what I'm pitching, and that is what I think is playing out in this particular situation.
Well, Ghana, I hear you. We all hear you. I still think this is quite a contentious matter, because even just listening to you, when you said something about the African Union being silent, I was about to ask, okay, so if the African Union is being silent because of his very strategic role when it came to fighting back against Boko Haram, I'm just thinking to myself, to what extent are we always going to sacrifice democracy at the altar of expedience? Because there's been speculation as well in Uganda that for some reason the president has managed to continue his role backed by external support because of his role in fighting the rebels in Somalia. So I know that is speculation, but at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves that to what extent are we going to sacrifice democracy at the altar of expediency? Because, these situations will keep recurring if we don't put a stop to it. So at some point, we have to get to a place and say, okay, the buck stops with us. We need to change, or else we are not going to come out of this vicious cycle. Yeah. So with that, I think we'll continue.
Violet, I just wanted to say one last thing. I think what we're reflecting on here isn't even democracy too, right? I think that's the important thing here. We're just talking about normal succession politics, right? A lot of people would not claim that Tanzania is a democracy based on different metrics, right? It's disputed, right? But there's a normal sort of succession process, right? So I think your framing of it and sort of this tension that there is important. But I think we're even talking about more basic things that Gloria mentioned that just should be done, right? A succession plan, right? Some, legacy that includes an embrace of that. So yeah, absolutely, Violet.
I agree. Well, this has been a very heavy topic. Let's head over to something might be lighter. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and find out. But hey, Gloria. Well, Gloria, I do have a quiz question for you. In which Southern African country do indigenous leaders want a big oil corporation out of their land?
Oh, I remember seeing this. I forgot. Somebody remind me.
Anybody want to help
Namibia.
Larry out? Oh yes,
Namibia.
that is
That's
true.
right. Namibia.
That's
Yes,
true.
yes. Thank you.
You guys see the vaccine is working. Yes, so the land the land is the Okavango Delta in Namibia, and it's home to some of the world's most threatened species, including endangered African wild dogs and cheetah, wild rhinoceros, black rhinoceros, and lions. It is also a World Heritage Site recognized by the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, and it's pivotal to the water supply for the Kalahari Desert, and its unique ecosystems draw large numbers of tourists eager to explore its biodiversity each year. It holds a sacred meaning for the San, an indigenous group that is considered one of the original inhabitants of the Southern African region. So, Gloria, what's on your mind?
Yeah, so on my mind today, there's a story that I saw on the news about a Ghanaian celebrity. Her name is Rosemond Brown, but she's fondly known in the public space as Akuapem Poloo. So this lady
sounds like it's going to be
it is juicy indeed. So this woman posted a picture of herself naked with her son to celebrate his 7th birthday. So she published this picture on Instagram. Let me read to you the caption that came with that picture. I'm naked in front of you because this is how naked I was giving birth to you. So in case you find me naked lying somewhere, don't pass by me, but rather see me as your mom who brought you to life. As you can imagine, this situation didn't go well with the public. There was intense and serious backlash over this kind of behavior from the mother. And to the point that even the Child's Rights International Organization, which is a child's rights organization, stepped in. So they petitioned the Ghanaian Police Criminal Investigations Department to look into this situation. And this is what they said. As a child's rights organization, we deem this act as a violence of the welfare principle of the Children's Act and abuse of the child's right to privacy and dignity. We wish to notify your esteemed office to investigate the taking of the said images and its circulation. And on the other side, of course, the public was not happy seeing a mother exposing herself. She was completely naked, but only had her hair cover some parts of her body, but she was naked. And so lots of people were angry. And then, so that resulted in her being given a 90-day jail sentence. And so others thought that 90-day sentence was too harsh of a punishment for this mother who's now going to be separated from her child. But the point of the story, I mean, for me, if I could bring in my own personal opinion into this story, is I was just, first of all, shocked to see that. I mean, it was just like, why? There are so many ways to entertain a 7-year-old. Why would you do that? That was initially my thought. I mean, it's just unthinkable to do that to celebrate a child's birthday. But also just looking at this story and having people say that the 90-day jail sentence is a harsh treatment for this mother. I looked at it and said it's only a harsh treatment because this situation is complicated, because the person who committed this abuse is also the mother. But if it was somebody else in this case would say, yeah, how could you do that? If somebody else's child will probably upload this 90-day sentence. But again, I understand where these comments are coming from. But at the same time, I feel like we cannot have double standards. On this show, we talked about Cutie. We were all mad about the sexualization of kids. And the fact that this kind of behavior came from the mother does not excuse it. It's wrong. That's why we have movies that have parental guidance. That's why we have laws that you cannot claim to have consent from a child who's under 18. In other countries, even at 17 years old, it doesn't matter what your excuse is. that is a child. And if you are caught, you go to jail. And so from that perspective, personally, this was just so inappropriate, whichever way you look at it. And it's only because now the mother is involved and this is a young child, it makes the situation very, very complicated. But I can mention that she was released from jail on bail. The judge ordered her to pay a $13,000 bail, which was paid. And now she's waiting. She appealed. Sorry, she appealed that sentence, and now we're waiting to see that appeal. Just to mention quickly before you all jump in, one of the reasons why she was granted bail is because she's a young first-time offender, and she clearly showed remorse. She cried and admitted to her guilt, but also the court ordered her to report to the police twice a week and to hand over her passport, so she cannot travel until this whole case has been settled. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on this.
The reason I'm holding back my laughter is Ghana's face. Like, I'm looking at you tell the story.
Yeah, you know, a lot of things is going wrong in our world these days. As a parent, I'm worried about a lot of things that is happening that we don't get to see, we don't get to know. But we only get to know when those kids become, crises to the society. That somebody is bold enough to post that naked image beside that innocent young man might mean that a lot has been going on before now.
Mm-hmm.
But what is the message to celebrate there? I mean, what is the thing? That's the question that comes to mind. When you flip it, let's assume that's not the mother. Let's assume that somebody else that did that to that young man. We know what the reaction of the mother will be. It will be a case of sexual exploitation of the young man.
Yeah.
That same thing that the mother would likely have raised as an argument is the same thing that we're talking about. The young man has been sexually exploited by the mother. So the question is, what do we need to do to help the mother to, maybe she's suffering from a behavioral crisis. We don't just wish it around that she's the mother. We need to go deep into this mother. What has been the pattern of her behavior that is not known to us? We need to interrogate the young man. How does she behave to you? Have you been sexually exploited in the past? Has she been doing it to some other kids? If you can't do it with your kid, it may be possible that she's doing it to some other kids. So we need to raise some interesting questions. The emotion that she's the mother doesn't mean that she cannot sexually exploit the young man. Because what we've seen is a pure case of sexual exploitation. And she's audacious enough to get this into the public space because her morality never saw it as an issue. When you do something and you bring it into the public space, your morality will tell you it's not a problem. That's the meaning. There are no two ways to go about it. And to me, she might be suffering from some behavioral issues. She needs psychological attention.
I completely agree with that. So let me jump in there quickly. Because when I read this story, I saw that she was being sent to jail for 30 days and some people were against that kind of sentence. I don't know. For
90,
me, as Ghana said,
90
days. Yeah. I don't know. I guess that our reaction is just because, like Ghana says, she is the mother. But personally, I don't believe that prison is a solution to all problems. I think I completely agree with what Ghana said. We need, as a society, to come with laws and policies that address the actual problem. So she can go to jail. I don't know if it's going to fix the situation that is currently existing. And just for the boy who's caught up in all of this child is probably traumatized right now. And both the mother and the child, I believe they need some kind of counseling and something that can actually help them heal and move forward from this situation. That's the only reason why I don't think a prison sentence is the perfect solution to this family crisis.
Let me come in.
Eva, I'm curious to know your thoughts.
I think for me, when I saw that she was given 90 days, I just feel like that was too harsh. It should have been like some form of probation, some community service or something, just a warning or pay a fine or something. But the reason why a lot of concerns were being raised about the 90 days jail time for her was because a lot of Ghanaians disagree that she just put a naked picture online and she's sent to jail. How about those leaders that has been involved in corrupt scandals, corruption and those things? Why are we not putting them to jail? And this is what we are standing on, to put her to jail. So that is also a double standard in our society. You know, when politicians steal, we find them, we don't send them to jail. So people were actually making reference to, there was this guy in Ghana who opened an investment bank, and I mean, he kind of, everything collapsed and he has not paid the money back to all the people that invested in his company. And people were like, why is he walking free? And this lady posted a picture of herself in the sun, and she's going to jail. So they are like, we need to sit down and really reform our sentencing guidelines, you know, in the judiciary system. So these were most of the concern that people were raising. So that was also what led to the petition, because people were feeling like, yeah, what she did is wrong, you know, but give her some community service to do.
Mm-hmm.
Taking her to jail.
I'm sorry to jump
I'm coming.
in here.
Give
Okay.
her community service to do. Taking her to jail will not solve that. And also, there are a lot of women in our society now that are posting naked pictures of themselves. What do you do about them too?
Yeah, so that's
so the
very
whole
good.
thing has to be we looking into it, and as a society come out with laws to prevent young ladies from sharing some of these obscene pictures on social media.
Let me just say, on this particular story, we're missing what the issue is. The issue is the child was abused. It's not the fact that she posts a picture naked of herself. Women do that all the time. As an adult, it's your choice. If nude is what you're into, go ahead and enjoy yourself. But the fact is she brought into a child somebody who cannot give consent, and she abused the child. That is the law. That is the problem. It's this another human being is involved in it.
I don't know about that, Gloria. I think that is fundamentally, you know, what this case was about in some senses. But I think it occurs in a broader conversation about the state's role in policing morality and things of this nature, particularly things that are online. Because, you know, if we look at sort of these online postings, right, and what some governments, you know, classify as obscene postings, you see other governments elsewhere, you know, going after people for those those types of posts, or in some cases types of films or movies or things of this nature. So I think this is set against a broader sort of conversation about what the state's role is in policing morality. So despite the fact that I think the fundamental aspect of the case was about sort of issues of child's rights, and as you mentioned, the child's rights organizations were pushing forward the case, I think when you look at sort of conversations in Ghana, they're also having conversations about, like, what is the role of people on social media? Can we what kind of things can be posted? Because we do see the governments playing this sort of moral police sort of role in other contexts as well. So I think there is that broader conversation that's going on as well.
Oh, that's interesting to know. But one thing
you raise an interesting point. Go ahead, Ghana.
Yeah, one thing I like to raise is this. The fact that some people have committed a crime and they were not being dealt with is not a reason for not dealing with another crime. And because when we go this route, we are likely to run into society without laws. And that is the crisis we are dealing with in Nigeria. A little bit of distraction here. Nigeria recently, there are groups that are telling people you have to leave this place. If you don't leave, we will come in, we'll kill you and send you guys away. That is happening because in the past, some people, they refuse, they made the same statement, they didn't act on it, and people felt, oh, because government didn't do anything. So it has incentivized the behavior that other people can do it. And right now, when government wanted to act, some people say you cannot act because you didn't arrest the other people. You know, and now everybody is beginning to now see the consequences, because those guys, they said you should not arrest. Anytime anybody opposes or disagree with them, the next thing they tell you is that they are going to come over to lynch you. because they have this belief that some people will rise up and say they cannot be arrested. He said the whole thing is this: in any society, there are bound to be laws. There are bound to be what they consider to be morally upright. And there are bound to be what they consider to be wrong in the society. Whatever it is for them in that society, I believe it is the responsibility of the people of that society to protect whatever they consider dear to them.
But Ghana, I would say what Eva's point earlier is that the moral police are functioning a lot faster than the police on a lot of other issues, right? Somehow, some of these issues are being fast-tracked, right? And we can see that in a lot of different contexts. So we're wondering why we have this judicial system that can act so swiftly on some of these concerns. But why is it taking a lot longer to, say, recover people's money from a scam that was clearly taking place, right? So I think that's a broader concern, that both are issues of rule of law, but it's how rule of law is being applied across those two cases. But I'll point out one last thing, Ghana, a little bit of irony here based on our previous conversation. Now, Ghana, you're on the rule of law side, the constitutional side. I had to get you on that.
So let me jump in there quickly. Just one more thing I want to say. All the points that Eva made and Peter made are valid. For me, it's not a question of whether is the government right or wrong in this case. For me, that's not the point. And the issues of morality, I totally agree. There is so much that our government officials get away with, but they'll be quick to punish a simple person. But personally, this story, I'm only looking it through the lens of a child, to be honest. But not to say that everything else, every other concern that people have with the government, with how they police morality, those are valid points. And we should continue talking about these things and pointing out this hypocrisy. And hopefully we will get there where we have laws and policies that work well for everybody, where nobody in the society is above the law. But the case of this lady and the child, it was just purely wrong. For me, there's no other way for me to look at it, or even to use another problem in our society to try to justify this situation. That just doesn't work.
Yeah, and on that note, Violet, I want to mention one thing here, and you'll enjoy this one. So about children. So on a little bit of a lighter note, so the entertainer in Uganda, Can See Me, I think recently had a child. Yes. And they are putting a lot of posts on Facebook now. And the newborn already has a Facebook page with about 400 likes as of this morning. So, this brings up a larger issue of, what is your child's role at young ages on social media in these contexts as well. So I think you'd appreciate that one, Violet.
I agree. Again, we will push this to Discord because, we still have a lot to say about this, including myself. And on that note, I would like to vaccinate you with a quiz question. Prepare yourself.
Here we go.
Yes, so researchers from the University of Oxford and their partners recently reported high efficacy findings of a vaccine that they are in the process of developing for a very prevalent disease on the continent. What vaccine is that?
There's a lot of hope in this. I think that is the malaria vaccine. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. And the name of that vaccine candidate is R21 or Matrix M, and it has a high efficacy level of 77% in African children, 2 percentage points higher than the World Health Organization specified efficacy goal of 75%. So far, the vaccine has been trialed in 450 children, and it shows a favorable safety profile and is well tolerated. It also has excellent potential for large-scale manufacturing and low-cost supply. So it seems to be hitting all the correct notes. So, Peter, what is on your mind this fine Saturday?
Well, the first thing that's on my mind is you gave me maybe the easiest of the quiz questions, so I thank you for that, Violet.
Really?
So thank you. The more serious thing on my mind was the fires that have been taking place in Cape Town, South Africa. So these fires have been affecting different areas of the broader sort of Cape Town area, but in particular has influenced the the school, the famous university there, the University of Cape Town, which according to most rankings is the highest ranked university on the continent of Africa, and is known for its scholarship in a lot of different areas, including social science and the rest. And what you can see on your screen right here is the fire that's taking place in what arguably is the most important building on any campus, and that's the library. And libraries are really important because they house they house the collections for a variety of different fields, for example. And in the Jagger Library there on the campus of University of Cape Town, that's where the special collections are housed. So these are, collections that are not shared in other institutions. So you can't just say, well, let's, repair by taking somewhere else. These are collections that are there and present on that location. Now, of course, a lot of those collections, for example, are digitized. So that's a good thing. But of course, we care about the original, right? That the scholars want to look at the original. They want to put their hands on the original, or at least view it from a distance, right? And so this is a serious concern, because in recent years, there have been some renovations to the library that have really brought this library to great form. And now there's this fire. So they're going to have to rebuild. I think one of the good pieces of this news, if I could use that word good, it's not really good, but I guess it's some reason for optimism, which is, according to the Mail and Guardian that's been reporting on the story in South Africa, some of these special collections were not consumed in the fire, so are salvageable. Although, at the same time, there are large sections of these special collections, as well as a broader set of theses and other things that were there and deposited in the library have been destroyed. So there's a lot of conversation about what's going to happen now, and how are they going to repair this library? But I think the broader point, other than our sort of sadness about what has happened on the campus, is I think it raises the important point of how we store and how we care for history, right? Because I think in South Africa, memory and conversations about history are quite important, given the legacy of apartheid, given the history of imperialism in the country. And one of the big things to sort of keep in mind is, storing that, having access to that, and really ensuring that that's open to all to really interrogate and look at and experience. And the sad part about that is some of these special collections that have been consumed will not be, one would not be able to experience them in quite the same way as they had. But like I said, there are some digital sites and digitization of some of the pieces that were in these collections, like the Bleak and Lloyd collection, for instance.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a really sad story, and it reminds me of the fire that just recently happened at Makerere University in Uganda as well. Only that this time, this fire gutted the records section of the building, and that had very different dynamics. But this is really, really sad. Ghana, you were going to say something.
So the question to me is this: what are we learning from this? I'd like to know how well equipped the university is to rise up to incidences of fire outbreak and take them out within a very short time. This seems to be an intense fire that has caused monumental damage to one of the most valued assets on the continent. So if the fire has been able to do this much damage, what we need to interrogate further, because this has happened, the question is, how do we foster another one from happening? And that should be leading us to ask some questions that are these libraries in Africa, our universities, do they have a functioning firefighter equipment? If the university have effective functioning firefighter equipment, it's more likely that the damages couldn't have been this much. And the other thing we need to think about is that the university in Africa even making this a priority. Back in the days at the University of Lagos, there used to be little fire incidences here and there. Unfortunately, there was no time the university internally responded to any such crisis. The university will rely on outside intervention, and when they call these government entities, they will say there was no water. If there is water, they will say there was no fuel to power the vehicle. If there is a fuel, they will say there's no driver. And that begs the question that as a university that is meant to be the model for the society, they should have a functioning firefighting station that can respond immediately to this crisis and take out a fire.
I will say they did respond quite well, as you saw on your screen earlier, to the fire. I think this is a fire that's taking place in what have been in recent years, and this is the sad broader point here, a significant climate change effects in this part of South Africa, right? Just a few years ago, Cape Town was at a point where they were getting close to a very, very low supply of water and people having to conserve it, right? So we're talking about the effects of climate change right here. And we can see intense fires, whether it be in South Africa or whether it be in the United States and elsewhere. And no matter what you do, some of these fires can be extremely hard to fight. And it's been that way. And so as much as we may be sort of concerned with sort of security and firefighting, I think they did their best. And that's one of the reasons why they salvaged so much, right? And on your screen, let me see if I can put this on your screen. This is the article from the Mail and Guardian talking about that the destruction was sort of less than imagined, right? So again, not good at all, but a little less than imagined as they begin to curate some of the losses there. And you can see inside of the library there. And it talks about some of the collections that were affected and some areas of the collections that weren't. And part of the reason why the damage wasn't as bad was that they were quick to react to this, because it was such a critical piece of not just university infrastructure, but again, national memory infrastructure in the country of South Africa, right?
So Peter, what was the cause of the fireplace? Our audience would like to know this.
Well, it's a little unclear, but it's a fire there are fires taking place in other parts of the broader Cape Town area, right? So this is a situation of a contagion fire, for example. It appears, at least for now, as opposed to some sort of problem with wiring or something of that nature, right? There have been fires that they've been combating in other parts of the city that have related to the the drought and sort of these types of conditions, from my understanding, at least on this day. And of course, they'll be doing some more investigations on that.
And this is where the university has a bigger role to play, Pira. As much as they've done their best responding to this fire, one of the things we do in the university is to be anticipatory. We are aware that climate is going to be a problem, and what that gives us is the opportunity to have some mitigation plans in place. The business we do in the university is even to create problem when none exist. We create problem in anticipation that when the problems eventually happen, we have ways of responding to the problems as much as possible and as best as we could. So the issue is that one of the things that our university, not just in Cape Town, not just in South Africa, elsewhere in Africa and elsewhere in the world, we need to do better is how to prepare as the community, the university community, to do better attending to these kind of situations. Because now they've been able to curtail this damage. Imagine if the entire university has gone down. That's a massive loss to humanity, because there are rare collections in this university that possibly you can't find in any part of the world. And what this should be to us, the message to me and to the authority in this university and elsewhere in Africa and elsewhere in the world is that let's imagine that this is not going to be the last. What do we need to do right? What do we need to do better in order to foster the damages that have occurred from occurring? And that will make us to look at areas of weaknesses that we need to strengthen and how we need to prepare the university community better. Are they doing fire response training for the students in South Africa? These are issues that we have to talk about. Are they doing, educating the communities that live within the university, how they can respond to incidences of fire and make sure that they stop the spread of fire from going to adjoining places. So this should beg some very, interesting conversation about the things that the university needs to do better, the things that they've not been doing that they need to start looking into, so that we'll be better prepared forestalling this kind of thing. And that is one of the messages from climate. The climate change issue, we may not be able to reverse it. But what we talk when it comes to responses is about mitigation and it's about adaptation. So the question I want to raise, and which I think they should be thinking about, how well are they doing preparing themselves in the area of climate mitigation? How well are they doing preparing themselves and the neighboring community in the aspect of climate adaptation strategies? And I think the intellectual community is sufficient enough to rise and address these questions.
Yeah, if I could just a couple of the points that Ghana raised. I'm not sure what the university is currently doing in terms of mitigating issues related to climate change, but I do know that in terms of preservation of materials going forward, I saw an interview with one of the chief librarians who mentioned that, like Peter said, there are already a lot of material that was already digitized, but then with this experience, they are definitely moving to a greater extent into the digital space. And one of the interesting things that they've already done right now, they've created a website where people can submit materials. If you have materials that can be useful to the library, people have been responding positively to that. They already are in the process right now of collecting materials from the general public. And the Jagger Library, the one library that the pictures that we saw, is actually the library that housed the majority of African studies material, which is really heartbreaking for the school, for community, for the entire continent of Africa, which is, it's very sad. But again, like the librarian said, the public has been generous in providing some of the materials that they have. Of course, there will be materials that won't be able to be recovered. At least the originals will be hard to recover. But if we can have at least a digitized version and do better in the future, like Ghana said.
Yeah, and what you were seeing on your screen, well, Ghana was mentioning, were some of the collections that have been affected to varying degrees as well. And what, just to your point, Gloria, those were digitization of some of those records, photographs, books, and other things. For example, for the Bleak and Lloyd, for example, and Black Sash as well. And again, they're still evaluating the full extent, but it's really encouraging to hear that news, Gloria.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I wanted to mention something before we close.
Go ahead.
One thing of the UCT, the reason why this makes it so heartbreaking for me and probably for so many of us, for all of you, is that this year, coming at the back of the pandemic, a lot of students were stranded, where families had so many financial problems, where students were not able to get back to school without outstanding balances. We know that major university have policies that you cannot register if you have an outstanding balance. So they had to scrap that policy pretty much for all students. So already this year, the university is operating with less resources probably that they usually have. So adding this crisis to that is really is terrible. But yeah, there's good news. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. And I think I just had the talking drum telling me that it's time to end the show. So folks, again, thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did and were informed and entertained in the process. Join us on our Discord channel where the conversation never stops to continue these and many other conversations, and also meet other members of the Leaders of Africa family. Right now, I'm the only one on this team who's not yet vaccinated, and I hope by the next time we meet, I too will be vaccinated. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out our website at leadersofafrica.org to explore our institute programs, apply to our research methods program, and also register for Thursday's event. Please take great care of yourselves, and we hope to see you again next time. So from me and the rest of the team, it's bye for now.
Bye.